everyone. Welcome, welcome. Good day to everybody who's joining us today. Thank you so much for joining Elephant in the Room Revisited, where we are talking about the insights from our past session in February. Wow, that was 2 months ago, where we were able to gather some incubators and investors during as a side event for the SandCloud Forum. And we were able to gain some insights from that discussion during that time. And today we want to present the insights, the themes that we were able to find from these discussions so that we're able to see how we can either deepen the insights that we have or how do we move forward from what we've learned. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining us and being so early. We're very happy to have all of you here. While we are waiting for others to come in, can I please ask everybody to please rename themselves with their organization to the right of their name. Thank you for those who've already done that. So you can take the lead from people like Whisper, Sandra, us as well, have their organizations on to the right, just so we know who is in the room. So we'll give you a minute or two to rename yourselves and while we wait for the others to come. Great. So great to see so many familiar and new names today. Thank you so much for joining. Again, for those who just came in, we'd like to request if you can please rename yourselves with your organization to your right, just so that we know who's in the room today joining us. So nice to see such a varied room today, and we'll get to know each other a little bit more in a while through our chat. Right. Okay, so maybe while more people come in, we can start with our check-in for the day to get to know who is in the room with us today. So, Madura, if you can please bring up our mentee for today. Thank you so much. Awesome. There's already one answer here. So if you can join us through mentee.com, you can use the code that Madura has also placed on the chat below. Please join us there and please let us know where you are coming from today. Love to know which countries we have here. Of course, this discussion is mainly focused on insights within East Africa because our first elephant in the room discussion was done with those within the East African context. But of course, please feel free for those who are not within the East African context to join the conversation. So South Africa, awesome, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. We'll wait for the others to come in. We have a lot of India here, Kenya as well. Thank you for joining us. Great to see all of you here with us. Kenya, Kenya, India, South Africa. Great. I think we have a big Kenyan delegation or participants today, which is awesome. Switzerland, oh, welcome. Thanks for joining us today. Great. Germany as well. Great. Awesome. Cool, cool, cool. Yeah, let's go ahead and move to our next question, Madera. So in terms of organizations, right now, we have some incubators in the room, some consultants, some network conveners, academic institutions also here. Great to see that. Awesome. Any investors in the room? Investors, donors, entrepreneurs? As of now, it's okay. Maybe they'll be joining us later. I saw Gladys introduce herself in the chat. Hi, Gladys. Nice to see you here. Oh, great. We have one investor in the room. Awesome. Welcome. Let's move to the next question, Madra. How would you rate the current state of incubator investor relationships in East Africa? Okay, so As we mentioned, a discussion that's contextualized within the East Africa region for now. We're planning to bring this to the other regions that we have a focus on in the Pollinate Impact Network. But for now, we'll focus on East Africa, and it looks like it's going a bit to the right now, but it's still a little bit strained, right? It's not as strong as we'd want it to be. It looks like it's now staying in the 2.1. So there is strain there. Welcome. Okay, so it looks like we're equalizing in the two range. So we do see that there still needs to be a bit of improvement in terms of the current state of incubator and investor relations. Great. Madura, we can go to the next slide. In your experience, what's the biggest barrier to strong collaboration among incubators and investors? Investors not turning to incubators. There have been cases of that happening. Trust and repeated collaboration over years. So really building that relationship with each other. Gatekeeping. So also some information. I'm guessing it's access, right, to the information or even relationships or this network with either investors or incubators. Divergent priorities, having different priorities, not the same for both of the organizations. Short-term focus, lack of trust and sector knowledge. Young innovators need to be able to articulate their theory of change clearly, including understanding where investors are coming from. If this is in place, true collaboration is more possible. So also being more specific and being able to clearly articulate your theory of change or your unique selling proposition as well could be very important. Limited time in the same spaces. Disconnect in terms of onboarding criteria by incubators and investment criteria by investors. So as we saw, divergent priorities, right? So it's kind of reflected also in the things that are being communicated. Trust, mistrust is also being thrown around here in the responses, misalignment. Okay, awesome. And I think do you have one last question, Madura, for today? No, okay, that's it. Well, thank you so much. It's really an awesome way to kind of get to know the people in the room right now and where you're at. But before we really dive in, I don't think I got a chance to introduce myself. Hi, I'm Rod. I'm the community choreographer at Pollinate Impact. I am based in Manila. So good afternoon to everybody in Southeast Asia who might be here. And I just like to introduce Pollinate Impact a little bit for those who might not be familiar of what we do as a membership network. So Madura or Aditi, if we can bring up the slides for uh, Pollinate. Awesome. Thank you so much. So Pollinate Impact is a member-led network of impact incubators and accelerators in the Global South. Our current geographic focus is in South Asia, Southeast Asia, and Sub-Saharan Africa. And currently, we have a member base of around 40 plus organizations all around these regions. And we'd love for you to join if you are an impact incubator or accelerator who've existed for at least 2 years now. We'd love for you to join the network as a member. And this will give you an opportunity to engage with donors and ecosystem support organizations, just like what we're doing today, right? This is a discussion on the insights we've gotten through an in-person event that we did with investors who were in the room with us. Receive a weekly list of funding opportunities directly into your email. You also get personalized support for concept ideation and proposal reviews for office hours with our partner organization called Assist, who work within that field of strategic partnerships. And then you also get an access to shared tools and resources in our tool library, which is a kind of shared library of all the tools that we've found that can be helpful for incubators and accelerators in this space. And of course, learn and share insights with other incubators across the Global South and more, just like what we're doing today. So some of those sessions we do have are member only, so which is another perk that our members get as a member of the network. So if you want, you can scan the QR. The shortened link is also there. We'd love for you to join the network. Next slide, please. if you do know others, so for example, if you are a member or you might not be an incubator, but you do know some impact incubators or accelerators who would be more than happy to join. If you refer, especially for our members, you get 10% off your annual membership fee if you join, if you refer us to another organization who will successfully get accepted as a member of the network. Uh, awesome. Do we have one last slide, Aditi, for this one? Yeah, so just to let you know, we do have other upcoming sessions. So if you see the ones with the stars, those are our member only sessions. So next week, we're going to the other part of the spectrum. So we're talking about investors and talking with investors today. Next week, we'll be talking with funders, where we get a chance to dialogue with three funders from three different global foundations to have a conversation on funding, impact, and collaboration. So we're joined by very great guests and funders who are willing to share their time and their priorities with us as a network. So I hope for the members in the room, you join us, and for those who aren't members yet, you can still apply for membership, and then we can welcome you to join that session also next week. For May, we have four three sessions. One is around adapting to a shifting funding landscape and impact incubation. We've all seen or maybe even experienced how the pullback of support from some international organizations have really affected operations and how incubators are managed now. So we'd like to see how this has also affected the ecosystem, including one member of the network, as well as a funder and assist who is helping us with the office hours, will also share their view of how this shifting funding landscape is affecting us and what can we do to make the most out of it, make the most out of a maybe a sort of negative situation, right? On May 14th, another member only situation, we're closing off our healthcare incubation state of play series with insights and actions from the broader ecosystem players and gathering those like entrepreneurs and maybe one funder to help us talk about what insights can they bring to help incubators better support their entrepreneurs who work within the healthcare industry. Lastly, for me, we are also talking about impact measurement, impact data, and stories. So here, how do we effectively do storytelling for our impact data and make sure that it speaks to the audiences that we want to, including our funders and other stakeholders. Then for June 5th, we are introducing a new program in the network called our peer mentoring program with the Human Edge, who is currently our partner as well. So this is an information session that we are hosting to get to know more about what this peer mentoring program offers. So I hope to see all of you in any of these sessions after today. But this is the end of my spiel about Pollinate Impact, and we will now get to our session. So just to give a little context again for those who might not have been here. So we did have a in-person session, a side event for SandCalp where we gathered investors and incubators into the room, and then they were able to share their insights on how we can further strengthen the relationships between incubators and investors. So to give us maybe more of a context around that and a quick introduction, I'll pass it over to Tess, who will introduce us to the main bit of the session.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. All right, good day to everyone. My name is Tess Thuo. I'm based in Nairobi, Kenya. I am the network nurturer, and for those who are present at the fishbowl, I believe you've met me before. So as Rod mentioned, in February, we convened, I mean WYLDE and Sandbox, who are both ESOs based in Nairobi, Kenya. We brought together investors and impact incubators. And when I say incubators, I also mean accelerators. And so we were trying to address the elephant in the room. And the idea behind this was, how can we bring together these two camps? And so we had a fishbowl discussion, which enabled us to be able to bring in two different perspectives. And so we took down notes, we listened, and we're back to ask, did we get it right? And the only people who we can ask this are those who know the game best, which is you, the incubators, the investors, and probably some entrepreneurs that we have in the space. And so today will just be about validating the findings. That's one. And then two, how can we take it forward? And more than that, is there, and as we present, I think the most important thing for you on the call is to ask yourself, does this sound correct? How can we take this forward? And is there anything else that we're missing? And so this is just not another conversation where we point out the challenges. This is hopefully going to be a call that we can take something forward. And so towards the end of the call, we're going to have 2 breakout rooms where we're going to have one group that decides to deepen what it is we share, and another group that can decide to join in and then discuss how we can have action steps to move the needle. So that is it for the discussion and the context of this whole conversation. And so I'm going to welcome Ariel to present the findings. And then shortly after, we'll have a Q&A and a couple of reactions afterwards. So karibuni sana, that is welcome in Kiswahili. And I hope you'll have a lovely session, and I hope the insights would resonate with all of you. Thank you. Over to you, Ariel.
Thank you so much, Tess and Rod, and thanks for everyone who's joined. Really excited to share what we've learned with you. I think Madura or Aditi will pull up the slides. And as we do that, I'll just say what I'm sharing today is what we heard, right? So I really tried not to impose our own perspectives on this. So this is very much what we have heard from the incubators and investors who were in the room for that fishbowl discussion. So great. Madura or Aditi, I'm not able to see the screen. Oh, sorry, is it just me?
No, I think Aditi is just trying to fix it. Quick. There we go.
Super. Okay, awesome.
And we are
awesome. Okay, thanks. So yeah, we can go ahead to the next slide. I'm going to jump right in. I know I have 20 minutes, so I'm sorry. I am going to talk fast. So bear with me. So just to recap, quick highlights of the key things that we learned and what we've heard. Very clear communication gaps and communication expectations between investors and incubators. That was a very obvious one, which was really resulting in a lack of common understanding and common definition of what even this word of investment readiness even means. Because we don't have a common definition of what investment readiness means, of course, then there's a sort of resulting mismatch in the expectations of what's coming out of incubation programs in terms of the quality of the entrepreneurs. And again, as Tess mentioned, when I'm saying incubators, I am using that and as inclusive of incubators, accelerators, venture studios. Yes, then the available capital in the market is constrained, which is giving rise to a lot of grants, which was a very big issue for our incubators, and frustrations that folks are working in silos. So I think probably nothing too anyway, shocking there, but I'll go into each of these. So we can go to the next slide, please. So the first challenge was around communication. So it's just a complete confusion as to who's doing what and who wants what. What the investors don't know who the incubators are. They don't know what the incubators are doing, what sectors they're focusing on, what programs they're running. The investors equally kind of admitted that it's difficult to communicate what their expectations are to so many incubators. But it's very confusing as to even who's doing what and how do you do that effectively? How do you communicate that effectively, your needs and expectation, when there are so many volumes of players in the space? So having the information is obviously important, but I appreciated seeing a lot of the feedback in the Menti poll in the beginning that information is good and having information is a really powerful thing. But building the relationships between incubators and investors is, we think, is really important, though I would say there wasn't necessarily consensus on this, which it's sort of a chicken and egg situation in terms of trust. Does the trust come from quality and consistently delivering high quality entrepreneurs? Or does the trust come first and then the willingness to understand sort of where the incubators are coming from, come in? So yeah, then I think we can go to the next slide. And I wanted to pull in some of the specific quotes that we heard. I am not going to read these. You all can, I'm sure, are very literate and can read these yourselves. And I'm sure Rod can share these slides afterwards, again, because I know I have limited time. But in a nutshell, you know, the incubators in the room were really emphasizing the importance of maintaining relationships. But they often felt like they had to do all the work. And that they were always the ones reaching out to investors, and that they didn't necessarily feel that was being reciprocated, and the investors really acknowledged that. And one of them even said, you know, like, if we're not the ones who are doing this, then who is, right? Who is going to activate that pipeline if not for us? And I'm just going to highlight this quote on the lower left, which, you know, there were different opinions in the room from the investor side. So the investors are in pink, the incubators are in blue there. And, you know, some of the investors said, yes, trust is important, relationships are important, we really understand that. And some of the investors were saying, you know what, maybe it's not trust, and the trust would come if we're getting consistent quality. So yeah, so there was some mixed reviews on that, but I think the data actually speaks to that. So we can go to the next slide, and these are from some polls that we ran during the session. So any of the graphs here were data that we collected during our fishbowl discussion. And what I want to just highlight here is that investors really heavily rely on referrals and warm introductions, which to me really validates the need for stronger relationships and trust. I do want to highlight here that only 2 investors from that fishbowl discussion, only 2 of them specifically said that they get pipeline from incubators. So while we assume incubators are offering investors their pipeline, where investors are actually getting their pipeline from is not directly from incubators, but from other investors, from other investment banker types, advisors, things like that. Incubators, on the other hand, while the sentiment from incubators have heavily been on relationships, in terms of how they get their pipeline to investors is actually less reliant on warm introductions. And they're sort of spreading their efforts out across different channels, some of which I want to highlight are not being used by investors at all, right? So I think that's just important to note. And that kind of echoes the sentiment that we heard in the workshop, where many incubators are supporting enterprises to be pitch ready, but not really investment ready. And I think that was highlighted here on the doc prep and readiness piece, where the incubators are really focusing on preparing the documentation, but less so on the other parts of the business. So we can move to the next slide, and I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to try and go quicker. Yes, I think generally relationships are mutually cool. Again, I think validating the sentiment that incubators feel like they're not getting as much engagement as they would want to with investors. However, I think investors think they're a little bit more friendly than the incubators feel. We can go ahead and move to the next slide. So just quick recommendations. And again, these are recommendations that actually came from the participants in the room. There was a lot of recommendations to actually build this database, which is great. But that in isolation of not having the relationships and trust, I don't think is going to work. So I really see these as 2 halves of the same coin. We need to build these relationships. We need to build better trust. But we do need to make sure that we're improving the flow of communication, and whether that's a database or something else, but this came up severally during that discussion. So we can move on to, I'm sorry, number 2. So the second insight was really around this issue of what does investment readiness even mean? So what surfaced was that there is an incredible amount of emphasis on getting entrepreneurs investment ready on both sides of the equation, both from investors and both from the incubators, but we really don't know what that means. And incubators are, you know, requested to design programs with investor expectations from the beginning, but they also raise the point that, you know, we have entrepreneurs to consider, and sometimes, and they need to also, the incubators need to consider the needs of the entrepreneur. Which are the investors who have the right size ticket, the right type of financing that's best suited to the entrepreneur. And fundamentally, right, are we creating an investor-centric environment or an entrepreneur-centric one? And the recommendations were really that it has to be a two-way street, and it cannot only be solely focused on selecting that pipeline for the investors. So we can keep going here. Again, I think these quotes just really emphasize the misalignment of what this investment readiness means, and the acknowledgement from investors where they actually said, you know, we are very different, and we are looking for different things, and we ourselves have different ideas of what investment readiness means, and then compounding that. Oh, sorry, that's 3 Fs. Sorry for the typo. I'll fix that. Compounding that with the inefficiencies of communication, right? How much time can you possibly invest in maintaining those relationships with so many different investors, so many different incubators? It's really impossible to do that, and it requires a lot of effort on both sides of the equation to do that. We can go to the next slide. And I just wanted to highlight here that, you know, not only do incubators struggle to understand what investors are looking for, but they feel like they're not getting meaningful feedback that could actually help them improve, right? More than half of the incubators in the room are like, we're not getting anything. And less than a third of them are actually getting helpful feedback. So how will incubators even know how to improve this pipeline if they feel like they're not getting the feedback on the startups in their program? So just wanted to highlight that. We can move ahead to the recommendations. And okay, I'll say the first one here on the clear USP for incubators. This was not one that came up from directly the participants. This is one that we've seen time and time again with Pollinate Impact, that in order to make that efficiency work and to be able to invest the time to build meaningful relationships, you have to know who you're going to as an incubator, and having that very clear USP and focus will really help that. We can't be everything to everyone. And I'll say that in the context of this conversation, that's to connect with the right investors, but really that will really help with attracting other stakeholders as well, not just entrepreneurs, but donors and funders, etc. But the investors really need to also engage with the incubators. The incubators, again, as I said earlier, feel like they're the ones who are sort of always pushing the investors and not getting necessarily the engagement that they would like, to really realize the benefit that incubators are offering and activate that pipeline, to quote the investors directly. Great, we can keep going. Oh, and I'm sorry, this should be number 3. Sorry. I was working on my slides late last night, so apologies for the typos. So this should be number 3. So it doesn't then shock us that the graduating entrepreneurs coming out of programs are not meeting the expectations of investors. And we heard that time and time again. They're not ready for investment. They're not ready for investors. They need more polishing. They need more time. They're coming out too early. And incubators didn't dispute this in the conversation, but they really talked about the very real tensions and constraints under which they're operating. Oh, thank you. You're making me look so smart by fixing that. Thank you. So yes, the constraints that they have is they feel like their hands are tied, and really limits their ability to do their job to the best of their abilities, right? So the incubators would love to be able to offer highly customized programs with deeper understanding, but on the other hand, standardized incubation programs are easily scalable. They're more cost effective. You know, that quality versus quantity tension can be is a constant one that incubators are facing. Time is another one. You know, we know that entrepreneurs need a long time of support, but funded programs tend to be you know, around 3 to 6 months, or very short, and within that there's bureaucracy, etc. And then getting the right fit for the right program, right? I mean, we talked about earlier, picking the entrepreneurs to suit the investors, but it's not just the investors to consider. There's the donor who's funding the program, and they are looking for some level of impact metrics. The investors want to make money, and the incubators really want to help their entrepreneurs grow. So there's this very real tension of can we have it all? And the sentiment is we might not be able to have it all. So we can go to the next slide, which had some really nice, not nice. So I think just some quotes from our session that I think really echoed this. And we also heard that the inconsistent quality of incubation in the industry may create a negative perception of what's coming out overall from incubators. And yeah, I think, again, the incubators are fully recognizing that they wish they had more time. They wish they had resources for more tailor-made, more customized support. So they're not in disagreement. They're very much aligned with some of the things that investors would love to see. But there are resource and time constraints based on how the programs are being designed, and the expectations of those who are funding the program. So we can move to the next slide. The next one, again, I think is just reiterating what I've shared. So on the left is, what's the quality of entrepreneurs coming out of incubators as perceived by investors, and then how actually involved are investors in these programs. So investors are complaining about low quality pipeline, but the reality is that they're not really involved in the incubation programs, which I've already highlighted, right? So more than half of the investors who are in this conversation said they don't actively engage or attend demo days. I don't know if you can see option A there in blue, like they don't even get invited to engage, right? So there's definitely a correlation here that the quality is low, but the investors are not getting as engaged as they could or should be. So it's no wonder that the quality coming out isn't better. The incubators are sort of playing this game with one hand tied behind their back, and investors aren't engaging as much as they could in sort of mutual support of the entrepreneurs that we're working with. So we can move on to the recommendations, which again, not shockingly, we really love to see the investors get involved earlier on. And this is on both sides, right? So the incubators need to ask and need to get them involved, also at the right time. One of the investors said, it's very common for them to receive an invitation to say, oh, we're having a demo day tomorrow, or, so really getting the timing right, engaging with them early, and not just before the program and during the design of the program, both before the program, during the program, as mentors. As some of the incubators said, they have mock investor panels, which are very effective, but also post-program. I really like this quote at the bottom where they say, we'd love to have longer follow-up after incubation so that we know what's going on with the entrepreneurs post-incubation. So keep investors involved. They're key stakeholders. Keep them engaged and invite them. And on the other side, we really expect the investors to pick up. We hope they engage in a more meaningful way, and a more consistently. I am sorry, Rod, I'm going as fast as I can. We can move to the next one. So number 4 is, and again, this is not shocking to anyone in this room. We know the available capital in the market is limited. The entrepreneurs who are coming out of incubation programs can't get investment, and some don't even want investment at all. We heard that, and we'll dig into that in the next slide or two. But grant funding is often more accessible and available in the market. However, getting grants is a double-edged sword, and we heard very strongly from the incubators in the room that oftentimes grant funds are used in ways that don't actually grow the business, and that money that comes with limited accountability and compounded with immense pressure to deploy it very quickly from donors usually means that the funds aren't always utilized well. and this issue of the mindset of, you know, just being in it to get the money and not necessarily to actually grow the business came out very strongly in the conversation, and really looking at how do we address that mindset challenge that we're seeing as a trend with the entrepreneurs. So we can move to the next slide. And I think what's interesting here is, you know, on the investor side of things, they're saying, oh, you know, the startups aren't ready to accommodate capital. But on the incubator side, they're saying, you know what, our entrepreneurs don't even want, they don't even want that money. The fundraising process is tedious, it's painful, it's not worth the effort. And then meanwhile, you have the grant investors, as I alluded to on the previous slide, that really want to deploy their money very quickly. So now you can imagine these same programs that are running for 6 months, they have 2 months of contracting, 4 months to get a program out. Meanwhile, the donor is saying, oh, and by the way, we need to get this money out the door. So what happens is the money doesn't necessarily go where it could be utilized best, and it may not actually be creating the catalytic capital that the market needs, but really distorting what we're seeing in the market. And this fear of grantpreneurs being on the rise, and the prevalence of unaccountable or not unaccountable grant funding that is very loose, let's say, what effect that's actually having on the entrepreneurs. And this was a very, very strong concern from the incubators. We didn't have time for the investors to actually react to this in our fishbowl discussion, but for sure it will come back to them, I think, in time, because why will entrepreneurs in the long run take dilutive capital when grants are easier to get? So I do think we'll start to see that hitting the investors, if not already, in the near future. So we can move ahead to the next one. Again, the slide is not showing anything shocking. We know the volume of deals that are being done by investors are very slow versus the volume of deals that are being done by incubation programs, you know, is obviously a contributing factor to graduates from your programs not being able to access capital, right? And because they can't necessarily access the investment capital, they turn to grant givers. It's easier, it's more prevalent, and there's sometimes less accountability for it. So we can move on to the recommendations. And really what came out was more peer sharing. There are some really innovative things that some of the incubators are doing to really try and channel these grants more effectively. And I think there's a huge opportunity to share that more prevalently. I think this conversation was a great place to start. But also there's a very, very clear need to engage with the donors to make sure that they're aware of what these unintended consequences are, and sort of the pressures that come with managing these programs and deploying their funds are definitely going to have these negative repercussions in the market. And then we can move on to the last insight, which is number 5. Again, not shocking. I think we all probably recognize this, that we are operating in silos. So what's kind of ironic in this whole equation is, you know, that incubators are creating investment funds are creating incubators and venture studios, and we're still not working in tandem. And by working in isolation, we're really not getting anywhere, and we're just being very efficient with our time, our energy, our use of funds. And while we would love to say our common goal is in fact supporting entrepreneurs, you know, investors need to make money. Donors want to make impact. Incubators want to keep their doors open and the lights on. And there is this very strong pressure for attribution rather than contribution, right? People really want to take credit for the work that they've done with their entrepreneurs, which again can create negative consequences and really incentivizing the operating in silos. And we can move to the next slide. There was a really nice quote on this one on the lower right, you know, where this incubator is really saying you can only do so much for one person at one point in time, right? And really embracing that we need to be able to pass things along to the next player in this space. And Yeah, so I'm not saying incubators shouldn't start funds. That's not what I'm saying. It's just a sort of ironic situation that we're all trying to do a little bit of everything, and we're still, at the end of the day, not really getting very far. I think I moved to the last slide here. So yes, I mean, clearly we need stronger connections. As you heard from Rod about Pollinate Impact, this is what we're all about, not just between incubator to incubator connections, but also with other key stakeholders such as investors, donors, and really we see that the need to build trust, to build mutual understanding is really going to be critical for the success of this industry and this space. So I will leave it at that. Very clear plug there to join us if you haven't already. Madhura or Aditi, there's one last slide where I just have consolidated all of the recommendations, which might be helpful as we move into the breakout rooms. But I will stop there, Rod, and hand it back to you. And I'm sorry, I was a few minutes.
No, thank you. Actually, you ended right on time. So thanks, Ariel, for sharing it. I'm sorry you had to kind of breeze through some of these things, but hopefully the participants were able to process a little bit what we've heard as the insights from the first elephant in the room session. While I will be welcoming somebody to react to what we've shared so far, but before that, we are opening our Menti to also get some thoughts from the audience on what you've heard. And just quickly, so it might help you also process what you've heard from Ariel. Madhura or Aditi, if you have that Menti ready, please, so that we can gather some thoughts. Here we go. Thank you so much. All right, so this is a different Menti. Madhura has already shared the link below and the code. So you can go through this on your own pace while we have the reactor share their thoughts as well. But really here, we just want to know if any of these themes really resonate with you. Is there anything that was maybe oversimplified or something that you feel like we haven't really explained as much yet? So there are these questions that you can mull over while we hear from our reactor today. So as Tess mentioned, we had the privilege of working with WYLDE International and Sandbox. WYLDE is a member of Pollinate Network, Pollinate Impact Network, and Sandbox hopefully will be a member soon as well. So we'd love to welcome the CEO of WYLDE International and also co-founder of Sandbox, Chris Odongo, to give his reaction of the insights that we were able to gather from the first Elephant in the Room session. So Chris, you can please take it away.
Right. Thank you very much for that. Thank you very much for that presentation. I hope you can hear me clearly and that there's no background noise.
Yes.
Fantastic. I think after listening to Ariel present and after listening to all that, looking at the data, looking at the information, I'm thinking, what kind of reaction would I have? And so I took time and I was writing down my thoughts as they were being presented. And I think just going through them, obviously lack of a clear communication, expectation breakdown, sounds to me like the makings of a relationship that won't work. You start a journey, you want to relate with somebody, but you're not talking, you have mismatched expectations, you're not being candid with each other, and then it's like the investors are to be chased and investors will not chase. So again, there's that bit of who is supposed to chase who, and in this relationship, who calls first and who sort of initiates conversations or initiates discussions, and then the shocking thing for me, not even shocking, I think maybe eye-opening, is you're talking to an investor, you're thinking that the entrepreneurs you have are valuable, and this is like looking at it from an incubator side, but the investors are actually getting their pipeline from referrals. So they're not getting their pipelines from incubators, but here you are, we are rather as incubators and consultants thumping our chest and saying, we have the pipeline, we have the entrepreneurs, but you guys as investors, you don't want it. But the reality is that investors are not getting their pipeline from the incubators, they're getting them from referrals. And we are also not getting our entrepreneurs from the investors, like investors are not coming and saying, here are some entrepreneurs who approached us, they didn't quite meet the quality threshold. Can you help clean them up. We are getting our entrepreneurs from referrals. And so we have this relationship where we are both supporting entrepreneurs. We want to work and collaborate with each other, but the real source of our entrepreneurs or the real source of our work is not coming from each other. And so it's no wonder that we are not actually seeing eye to eye. And then events and pitches loved by incubators. We are always organizing them, but we are not inviting the investors. And in any case, I had something said about incubators are preparing entrepreneurs for the pitch competition. They're not preparing entrepreneurs to meet the investors, or they're not preparing the entrepreneurs for the investors. So that's really just quite eye-opening. And then I'm thinking in this relationship between investors and incubators and entrepreneurs, are we all being polite with each other? Are we doing the thing of, I will not be candid, I will not be honest, I will not be rude, I don't want to come out as being obstinate, being unfriendly, and so we're just being polite, and therefore then we are not actually saying what it is. We're not basically calling out each other and saying this doesn't work. And so there's a lot of politeness. And ultimately, we are all in this to make money. Nobody is here because of benevolence or, and there is, yes, we want to have social impact, but at the end of the day, we all have economic interests and want to make some money. And so who is paying for all this interaction? Who's paying the investors? Are the entrepreneurs paying the incubators? How are the incubators making money? And if we are not clear about all those things, then we just basically keep going around in circles, expecting to have maybe a different way of doing things, and yet it's not going to happen. And my last reaction is, are grants an illusion? Like the Hollywood star effect. Very many people are going to Hollywood wanting to become stars, but actually only very few people are making it onto the big screen. And so we have grants, and entrepreneurs are turning up, imagining that there are all these grants that are available, but are there really grants? And also we have investors, entrepreneurs are turning up and saying, there are all these investors for my business. But when we really think about it, are there really investors? Or is the reality that there are actually thousands and thousands and millions of entrepreneurs who are running their businesses through sweat equity, from their own hard work, from their friends and family supporting them, from supplier credit, and yet here we are trying to say they're investors. So for me, it's just, those are my immediate reactions, but I think it's very good for us to have what is it called, these insights, because then we can be able to learn from them, and we can be able to change, and we can be able to pivot. And immediately I'm thinking, if I'm actually going to be helping entrepreneurs, and I'm actually going to connect entrepreneurs to investors, yeah, should I then be really investing my time in this? But if I'm to invest my time in this, then how does that make money for me, so that I'm able to actually make money, pay my employees, pay my suppliers, pay my rent, keep the light on, and give my shareholders a return on their money. Because ultimately, if I'm not giving my shareholders a return on their money, then what am I doing? And also, if I'm not giving value to the entrepreneur, then why would the entrepreneur pay me? If I'm not giving value to the investors, then why will the investors pay me? So it just goes back to really understanding what it is that we are providing as value for us as incubators, and therefore then who are we able to charge for that value. So yeah, those will be my immediate reactions. Thank you very much, Ariel and Rod. I hope, and for our viewers, I hope that you guys have heard what I've said. Yes.
Thank you. Thanks, Chris. Really great insights on your end. Really awesome to hear your perspective on this. Now we'd like to give some time for the audience maybe to ask their questions. We have Ariel and Chris here who were part of the discussions last time. And if you have anything that you want to clarify, also if you have any insights that you'd like to share, it's also very much welcome. So we have a bit of time for that. You can raise your hand, or you can just unmute and maybe ask your question or share your insight. That would be great.
And Rod, I'm just seeing Rajat's comment in the I don't know, Rajat, if you want to unmute, but his comment was around not having entrepreneurs in the discussion. Rod, did we have any entrepreneurs in the room from the mentee? I'm just curious.
No. So because even when we did the fishbowl, and sorry, I have got myself off mute. I hope you can hear me. Even when we did the conversation last time, right, in Nairobi, it feels like we are often making assumptions or decisions for the entrepreneurs because even in that fishbowl discussion, there was no one. It was focused between ESOs and investors, and that makes me feel uncomfortable around that because there are specific questions around the design of the programs that ESOs are offering. I think one part is to look at it from the lens of sustainability, like you are doing, and I think that is very important for ESOs. But the other part is to understand why is it that way, right? Is it that the demand is coming from innovators and enterprises for it to be that way, right? Or is it that the innovators are asking differently uh, to for some of those things? And I think we are working very closely with Wilgrow Africa right now to do this research around ESO's offerings and how the future would look like. And this has come out a lot from the innovators that we have spoken to. Often innovators end up attending 4 or 5 uh, incubators and accelerators to do that. So how useful? I think we need to bring that voice in this conversation, even though if it is for ESOs and investors, I think having them either as observers or informing the discussion, I think is needed. Sorry, I'll stop there, Ariel. I'm repeating myself.
Yeah, can I jump in? It's Rob.
Yes, please.
Thanks. Thanks. I really aligned it with what, both to Rajat and Chris shared. So many thoughts going through my mind, but one is most companies do not raise after one incubator program. So I think we're all in it together. And so people, I view it like a buffet. Certain companies, as they grow, are ready to uptake the skills and benefits from one incubator at a certain point in time. And a year later, they might be well positioned to uptake the best of what another incubator can often offer. And so I think it's a bit of a continuum, but also I think if you had to boil down from my experience anyways, most investment ready translates to revenue, organic revenue. The more organic revenue you can show, the more interested, a real investor will be. And even so, and Chris alluded to this, that almost the companies that attract the most attention are ones that are wondering even if they have to raise or not. They're saying, well, do I, can I grow organically? Do I have enough? Do I need to raise? I think sort of recognizing that is also interesting. So as Vilgrow, we're like, man, we need to really help our companies accelerate their value proposition as fast as we can to get revenue flowing in the door. Because I think the more revenue, the more interested you're going to be. And a pet peeve of mine, I'll share it. I shared it in the chat, but there's a lot of investors I find when you look deeper, you find out they don't actually have money. They're trying to generate pipeline to sort of raise their own. And I wouldn't highlight it twice if I didn't think it was a real thing. It's sort of like, it's definitely a thing. It's like, and so that's something us as incubators, before you start working with, these new investors, you find out, do they actually have money ready to go, and so that might be worth saving. If you find that out, it might be worth knowing how much energy you put in. So I'll stop there, but just some quick thoughts.
Thanks so much, Rob. Chris, Ariel, do you have any quick reactions to Rajat and Rob's sharing?
No, I think my only quick reaction would be, I think if provided we have enough interest and sort of maybe a coalition of the willing who wants to take this forward, I would very much welcome entrepreneurs to be part of the conversation. I think when we started this, it really was, we felt this relationship between investors and incubators was very strained, and that was so that was our starting point, I would say, Rajat. So I think if any of those any of you who are on the call who are willing to continue this conversation and really start to solution it, I would just welcome you to maybe bring some of your entrepreneurs as we carry this forward. So we're not doing this in an echo chamber of ourselves. And yeah, on point, Rob, totally agree. Sorry, Chris.
No, I think I was just saying yes, and I would agree with you that definitely if we had the entrepreneur voice and we had the call, the poll information from the entrepreneur, it would have really brought a very different contextualization, because then the entrepreneur would have also said how much trust they have with incubators, how much trust they have with investors, what is the distance there. And I think it will have really enriched the conversation. So definitely it is indeed that very big point. Yeah. So but in terms of without necessarily sort of like repeating myself again, is just to say that it's being able to put it in commercial context, and for me it's always what's the value that I'm adding to that particular person, and would they be willing to pay for that value, and that bringing that into very sharp focus, because when somebody else is paying for value on your behalf, then it's sort of like advertising, you're accessing something for free, but someone else is paying for that value that you're accessing. And so it's not the same. But when you're paying for value directly, then it's really that you're demanding and saying, I want this service, I want this product, I want this help, and I'm willing to pay for it. And I think that's where there would be a big difference, because the entrepreneur would be saying, I've come to this incubator, I've come to this accelerator, and I'm willing to pay either now or in the future to be able to get certain value, and the investor will also be coming and saying, I am willing to pay this incubator, I'm willing to pay this accelerator to obtain a certain value. And that's where really things become now very different and very sharp. But as long as someone else is paying us to deliver this value, then there's always going to be that level of distortion, and there's always going to be somebody coming to consume something that is not so valuable. Yeah. Over.
Thank you. Thanks both. Yeah, I think that could be like a third dimension we can still explore with an entrepreneur point of view here in terms of the insights, and definitely something that we'll take note of after this call. Thank you so much. We have room for maybe one more insight comment / question from the group. I know Ariel has also been answering on the chat. So is there anyone who'd like to? Yes.
Yes. Yes. Hi, Christine Gifyami from Beaumont. I'm sorry, I can't put my hand up, so I just jump in.
No worries. Yes, please. Go ahead.
So just a question, and what Chris had just said was really interesting, but based on the fact that some of the investors feel as though that the product that is produced for them is not up to scratch, there is that kind of friction. Is there something that the incubators and accelerators are providing to these investors that they cannot provide for themselves? And maybe this is an obvious question, and maybe it's in part of the slide, but I just wondered, is there a reason why they have to come to ESOs to get these? There's something that they cannot get for themselves, because they seem to have all these other avenues. But is there something that we ourselves, and I'm an accelerator, so what is it that we are providing that necessitates them to deal with us? And maybe that's really what we should be highlighting. That's just a question.
Hi, Kristen. I can quickly comment, and then Chris, or if anybody else who wants to chip in, I think it's a really great point. And I think what we heard, and I'm sorry, it wasn't in the slides, but I think what we heard in the discussion was there is potential additional value to be extracted from, that makes it sound very, to be gained from the incubators, not only in breadth of who they're seeing that investors might potentially be interested, but also in the depth of understanding that they have with their entrepreneurs and with the local ecosystem, right? So it's just that information and that knowledge, that deep understanding of their entrepreneurs, and knowing this is what they're struggling with, and this is what they're really great at. That knowledge is not being tapped by investors. And I suspect the reason why is because we don't have good relationships. I feel like if there were those strong relationships, it's like I can call up Chris and say, okay, hey, Chris, I'm looking at this guy. I see you've worked with them. What's the deal? Like, and he'll say, oh, you know, the promoter is a real, I don't know, pain in the ass, but they've got a really, really solid team and really great revenues. And, you know, like he knows. But because this relationship is broken because of what I'm not sure, whether it's the trust or the the consistency of quality or whatever, that I think that's the value add that the incubators and accelerators could and should be providing to the investors, but it's not happening because these communication channels and these relationships are just broken. But yeah, Chris, go ahead.
So the thing is this, yeah. I have, let's say I'm an incubator and I have 100 businesses that I'm supporting. And for me to be able to support these 100 businesses, either the businesses
and
pay
sorry, Chris, you're a bit low. Can you?
Sorry. Oh yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, so either the businesses pay me for the additional support that I'm going to give them, or a donor pays me for that support that I'm going to give them, or the government pays me for that support I'm going to give them, or the investor pays me for that support that I'm going to give them. But somebody has to pay, because then I have to get out of my office, go to this business site and provide them with that hand-holding and that continuous support. For me to get to a place where I know this business in and out and I can call an investor and tell them, look, this business is good. You're going to actually make money if you invest in this business. That's an intimate relationship that I have to have with the entrepreneur. And somebody has to pay for that relationship. If nobody's paying for that relationship, then what I'm ending up having is a transactional relationship. So I'll have these entrepreneurs for 6 months because they're in a program and somebody has paid for the program. And then I will send coaches to these entrepreneurs. They will they'll support these entrepreneurs. But after that, when the program ends, nobody is going to have a relationship with that entrepreneur in the long term. And I can't make my coaches have that relationship unless the entrepreneur is paying for that relationship or the investor is paying for that relationship. And that's why I was saying it all boils down to value, providing value and then being able to be paid for that value. Now, if I'm not convinced that entrepreneurs can pay me for that value, then I'm not going to maintain that relationship with those entrepreneurs. If I know that even when I introduce these entrepreneurs to these investors, that finder's fee, 1%, 2%, is an illusion. No one is going to pay me that money. Then I'm not going to do too much introduction to investors. So we are going to basically do preparing the entrepreneur for pitching, because I've been paid to prepare them for pitching. Yes, I need to prepare them for investors, but for me to get an entrepreneur to a place where they're actually being written for a check, that requires a lot of dedication. And so incubators are basically doing what they can up to the place where they're paid to do that. But then going beyond that requires then that somebody pays the fee or pays the cost. I don't see that happening, and the entrepreneurs are not doing it, the investors are not doing it, the donors are not doing it. And so we are caught up in that space. And maybe if we get to a place where we as incubators can now start telling entrepreneurs, look, I have this path, I can actually help you get to the money, I can actually help you get to grow in your business, but you have to pay me. Then now we can begin to really see relationships deepening and investors getting the benefit of the incubation entrepreneur relationship. I see Rob's hand is up.
Yes. We'll close maybe with Rob's comment or question. So last one. Yeah, Rob, go ahead.
I'll just be really quick. Chris is interesting because I call this faith factor on our side. So oftentimes we do an introduction and it's like, there's no money in it for us. It's just a warm introduction. And yeah, you're bringing a good point. I think one thing that I found too is as incubators, we need to be careful that we don't push every deal to an investor, or your reputation is also hinged on your quality. And so I only like to do like ones that I know, if I were invested, that the Vilgro has invested already, but we really think that if it was my money, this is a good bet. Those are the ones that you go forward, and those are the ones that I find do the best. And that may be 1 in 10 or 1 in 20, but then in the eyes of the investor, your reputation is upheld, and then they want more because it's sort of like, wow, they pushed it, that even if they don't choose it, is like they know that your output matters to you and they're aligned with it. So just wanted to add to what Chris said. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Christine, for your points. Yeah, Chris, you want to quickly respond?
No. I just wanted to say that there's a Kiswahili word that we use and we say kujituma, going above and beyond. And I think that's the spirit of this. If incubators are going to really support entrepreneurs to go and get to that place of investment, we have to go above and beyond and really just take the relationship and say, you know what, I'm going to support these entrepreneurs until they grow their businesses, until they access the funding. And I think, in a sense, that's where venture studios are beat as incubators, because with a venture studio, they have the funding, they have the capacity building support, they have the coaching, and they are really able to enter into that very long-term relationship with the entrepreneurs. But yes, let me stop there.
Thank you. The word was Fujiuma, Chris. Was that right? Did I say it right?
No, the Swahili word is kujituma.
Kujituma. Thank you. So going above and beyond. So thanks both for sharing the insights. Speaking of going above and beyond, we do have an activity today that we are going to do to help us, move forward, as Tess mentioned, move the needle in terms of this discussion. And we will have a breakout activity where you as participants will have a choice on whether you'd like to help us deepen the key insights, meaning get to know maybe which ones we still need to go a little bit deeper, or some that maybe have been oversimplified. So you can help us through that breakout session, getting to know those insights and how best we can still deepen it further. Or there's another group where we are dedicating it more to action steps, or like, where do we move forward from here? What is the first out of all these challenges that we want to focus on? And what does the next move look like? And how can Pollinate also, of course, help in moving the needle, right? So I think Aditi or Madura will be pulling up the breakout rooms, and you are free to choose which of the two groups you'd want to be a part of. So whether you want to help deepen the key insights that Ariel has shared, or try to answer the question, where are we going to move forward from today's session? Right. So I think we've opened the breakout rooms if you see it, and then you can join. So there are two groups. Please choose which group you'd like to join at the bottom. And we'll see you at the breakout rooms. Thank you so much, everyone, and see you back in about 15 minutes.
Am I in a breakout room or am I supposed to choose one?
You can choose, and if you need any support, then we can assign you to one manually.
Where's my choice? I don't see a choice. I don't see a.
Oh,
How to,
okay,
there's no
okay.
pop up
So
or
we
anything.
have
It came up.
okay. So there's one breakout room that focuses on deepening key insights, and the other one is on next action steps. And I'll maybe just write them out of the text also in case anyone else can't see. So it's either
But is there
deepening
a
insights
prompt
or
to
next.
choose, or how do you even like? I don't see anything to choose
See
to
one?
select.
Oh, I'm guessing not, but I can see that and then allot you to one. Let me know which one sounds right. And
Just choose one. It's fine. Either one. It's okay.
if there's anybody else that needs any support with choosing a room, please let us know and we can assign you a manual.
Yeah, you can also send me manually.
Sure. Do you have a preference or between deepening insights or next action steps?
That one for deepening the insights.
Sure. Hi, Gerald. Would you like to be assigned to?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now I can.
Yeah, you can assign me to any group. I'm okay with any group.
Okay.
Thank you.
No problem.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the main room. Thanks so much. I hope you had wonderful discussions in your own groups. We sure did in ours. So maybe we have time for maybe like a quick summary of what we got from our discussions on both ends. And maybe we can start with the Deepening Key Insights group. Tess or Ariel would like to share your quick insights and what the group discussed.
Yeah, yeah. So you actually caught us right in between a statement.
Oh,
But I
sorry.
but I am okay with keeping time. So I think for us, we spoke a little bit around what is the origin of this trust issue. Is it that the market is new, or is it something that has been there over a long period of time? And so, to the different conversations, what really came up was the fact that the growth has been rapid. And so, looking at the growth curve versus all the players, this definitely is a reason why trust is part of the equation. Something else I think that was interesting to find out was around how we presented the insights. So for some, they feel that it was a bit oversimplified with a recommendation to deep dive further into the root causes, as some of these root causes are actually documented and have actually been researched on. I think something else that I found very interesting was other perspectives. So in the bigger call, many of us spoke around having entrepreneurs present, but I think it's also equally important to have regulators in the room. It's equally important to start to think about institutions, and we're lucky enough in our group we did have someone from an institution who was able to recognize the role of institutions in this conversation, as well as looking at how we could have more local companies or businesses involved, especially in Africa and with the pulling out of USAID. I think that was a very interesting conversation. And I think finally was just around how all in all, it was a very deeply passionate group. And so we weren't able to touch on all the questions, but I think that gives a good summary of what the conversation was. And yeah, I hope I have not misrepresented anyone on our group. And so I'll pass it on to the other group.
Thanks, Jess. It seems like it was a great discussion, and it seems like we have our work cut out for us to continue this conversation on, right? So thanks for sharing that. Really quickly, we had a smaller group for the action steps. I'm sure you had a bigger group also. That's why it seemed like it was a very nice discussion, a lively one. On our end, it was also very lively. And I think what the group kind of agreed on was we start with the low-hanging fruit in terms of the challenges, which is on both the communication side and the definition of investment ready. I think those are things that they mentioned would be the easiest to tackle on our end. And what their recommendations were in terms of action steps was maybe we can create some sort of pilot of like what these definitions look like, a repository of sorts, and even maybe defining what a good process between incubator and investor looks like, and then try it out with a small group of willing organizations, both on the investor and incubator side, so that we can see if, like, for example, if this definition of investment ready really works for both sides, and it clarifies a lot of things for, let's say, the incubator end, right? And also at the same time establishing or clarifying other aspects that investors look for, which was brought up apart from ticket size. And I think this is part of the discussion also, right? Like what else is the investor looking for so that the incubator can look through their portfolio and be able to refer enterprises that actually are fit for the investors mandate. So that was the general recommendation from the action step side. Let's start with the low hanging fruit, maybe start with a pilot of the definitions and also how we can kind of tweak the communication so that it becomes more efficient. And then maybe that is our proof of concept to bring it further to the bigger ecosystem and then see if there's more buy-in to try out our little model of of definitions plus the process that we make. So that was really our discussion on our end. And we are on time, but I just like to open to the room if there are any like last insights or comments that people want to share or even suggest to us as we work on the next steps on these insights. We'd love to hear before we actually close for today's session. So maybe I'll give a few seconds or a few minutes for us to do that. Please feel free to unmute or raise your hand if you have, thoughts that you still want to share.
Unrelated sort of, Rod, I'd also love to know if people are willing to continue the conversation or get their hands dirty with us, maybe just drop it in the chat so we can pick you up for next steps.
Oh, sure. Thank you. Yes, definitely we can. So again, inviting those who maybe are not members of Pollinate yet to come join us. We can definitely work on this. And also, I just started sharing our feedback form. So if you can give us feedback on how the session went. Oh, Christine said she'd be happy to join in on next steps. Thank you, Christine. Let me just pull up our application form. Oops. While we wait for the polls, I hope we can get your answers on the feedback. But for now, I just like to thank everybody for being here today. We had a really great turnout for this session. Of course, I'd like to thank Ariel and Tess for they've been working on this for the past few weeks in terms of really consolidating the insights, because there was a lot of really great ideas and suggestions from the discussion. So it was really a lot of effort to try to bucket them into these insights. So just like to give my flowers, as Tess likes to say, to Tess and Ariel for their hard work on this. And of course, thank you to WYLDE and Sandbox, who have been our partners for these sessions, and their hard work also especially in terms of their in-person session, and for Chris for sharing his reactions today, and for everybody here for joining the breakout sessions and sharing, of course, their insights on how they think we can move forward with this. Yes, Chris, please go ahead. Oh, no, I thought you were, no worries.
By mistake.
No problem at all. Thank you so much, everybody, and I'm so happy to see in the comments that there are so many people who are happy to join in on taking this further. Great, and thank you so much for your feedback as well. We can get a few more in the end. Awesome. Well, again, thank you. I hope we had a really great discussion, and I hope to see you in our next sessions. Again, we were able to share a little bit about the next sessions in the start, but maybe because we still have some people in the room, Aditi, if we can just quickly share again our screen on our upcoming sessions, if that's still available. Awesome. Great. There. So again, different discussions that are going on within the network. Here's our invite again to join, but for the upcoming sessions, again, next week, it's all about funders, but this is a members only session. So if you want to join us, please join us to become a member. We'd be happy to welcome you to the network. And then we have different discussions for May all around the shifting funding landscape. Closing out our healthcare incubation support series, and then also talking about impact measurement and storytelling. And then in June, introducing our peer mentoring program, which we are very excited about. Awesome. Thanks, Aditi, for that. And thank you again, everybody, for joining today. I hope you have a great day, and we'll see you again on the next session. Thank you.